Now, going to trials was kind of like a hobby, a passion of mine. Unfortunately, there's not too many trials anymore that I'm interested in, but I highly recommend if you guys ever have a good trial in your town, go check it out. I mean, it's open to the public. Any one of us can go. You find out what's on the docket and you walk into the courtroom like you own it. I remember people would look at me thinking, who the hell is this guy? Now, I thought for sure they would have the El Chapo and these two twin brothers, the high ranking gang members in Chicago. I thought they were going to have that at the Dirksen Federal, but unfortunately, they tried it in New York City. But during major trials like that, where there's high security, national attention, sometimes you can't get into the courtroom. So they have the overflow courtroom. What's nice about the overflow courtroom, you could play on your phone, you could read a book, you could eat, you could talk, you could do things that you can't do in the regular courtroom. Now, court buffs are kind of like a dying breed. You don't really see too many anymore, aside from maybe a few college kids. But back in the day, there was probably about a dozen senior citizen gentlemen that were retired, wanted to get away from their wife. They would take the bus or the train downtown and sit in and observe. And I had a chance to meet these guys, have coffee with them. And sometimes the lawyers asked the court buff for some of their insight on how the jury's acting. Now, I remember at the Family Secrets Trial, which was on the 25th floor. That's the largest courtroom at the Dirksen Federal Building. I remember seeing this gentleman dressed in an all-white suit, Gator Wallace Bradley. He was one of Hoover's right-hand man back in the day. He legitimately, supposedly went legit. He was also the conduit between Leonard Clark and Frankie Caruso. But this is Gator Wallace. Now, you never know who you're going to run into, see, or even meet at some of these trials, especially the major federal trials. My very first trial was Gus Alex. Lenny Patrick testified against Gus Alex. As we all know, he was a major player in the Chicago outfit. And this lady here, Sam Giancana's daughter, sat in that trial, Antoinette Giancana. I didn't say anything to her, but I do remember seeing her in court. Now, early on at the Family Secrets Trial, I sat next to Rocky LaMantia most of the days. Real character. They would show his father, who looked just like him, on the big monitors. This guy would not stop talking throughout the trial. He couldn't control himself. And at one point, he tried to smuggle Frank Calabrese, prosciutto, and other Italian meats. He got caught. They considered a contraband. Judge Zagel barred him from the courtroom. Now, I remember during the middle of the Family Secrets Trial, I was actually sitting next to Mitch Marr's mom. I didn't even know it initially. And I remember he would stare at me every now and then, probably thinking, who the hell is this guy talking to my mom? But Mitch Marr's mom and I, we started talking. We had a few things in common. And she told me back in Willow Springs, she'll never forget the day they pulled that car out of the canal, referring to Diane Masters. Kirk Calabrese was at the Family Secrets Trial every single day. He sat by himself. I didn't see him speak to anybody. He was somewhat unapproachable. A couple days I actually sat right next to him without saying one word. And I remember during a highlight in the trial, Frank Calabrese Sr. stood up, pounded his fist on the table, started yelling. He said, "Ask Kurt." Kurt was so embarrassed, he got up, stormed out. Now, if you guys ever do attend a trial, keep this in mind. Normally on the left side of the galley is where the defendant's family and friends sit, along mixed in with other people. And on the right side is where the FBI, federal marshals, and prosecutors sit. I always used to like to sit in the middle, right next to the court artist, and I would actually peek over and take a look at some of her sketches. Now, this fine gentleman was a fixture at the Dirksen Federal Building. He went to most of your major mob trials over the years. Everybody loved and respected John, including some of the outfit guys like Alderman Fred Rohde, Joey the Clown Lombardo. I made small talk with John a few times, and it was always interesting to get his insight on what's happening inside the courtroom. Now, for the past 25 years, you got Chuck Gowdy, Chicago's top mob reporter. He was at the family secrets trial quite a bit. And I'll never forget, I overheard during a break one time in court, he was talking to Joey Lombardo, and Joey said to him that they have the wrong men on trial. Chuck Gotti said, "Excuse me?" Joey said, "Yeah, George Bush and Dick Cheney should be on trial." Chuck Gotti laughed. Now, well-known Chicago reporter Carol Marine, I used to see her quite a bit at the Dirksen Federal Building, and I'll never forget when she tried to interview Bobby Salerno when he was coming out of court one day. He told her that he's an old boxer, that he can handle himself, and for her not to worry about it. Fast forward, she tried to come into Richards Bar with her camera crew, and about 3, 4 guys at Richards literally showed her the door. Now here's John Cass, another well-known Chicago reporter. This guy's a real character. I actually made friends with him and met him at the Dirksen Federal Building. He likes to enjoy a nice dinner at La Scarola as well. And what's cool about knowing John is he'll give you sometimes the inside scoop on what he knows about some of the Chicago outfit guys. And he also likes to listen to guys in the neighborhood with some of our stories. Now, one thing I learned by going to all these major federal trials is these are real. I mean, these are people's lives. So when you see the defendant's family, it gets real. For example, Large's wife, Large's daughter, his son, his friends, they were there supporting him every single day. And to them, their fathers aren't mob guys. But when they get found guilty, it's devastating. Now here's Mark Polkman, high-ranking outlaw motorcycle gang member. This was one of my favorite trials. He was on trial with Mike, large guy Sarno. Most of the evidence was against him. He got hit with 60 years. Eventually got it reduced to 40. And I remember I met his girlfriend from Justice, and she was going on what a great guy he is and how the government's framing him, etc. I just went along with her. Now, again, when you see the actual family of the defendants or the family of the victims, it really hits home, man. I'll never forget Frank Sr. telling off the judge at Frankie Jr.'s trial at the county building. I never heard anybody talk to a corrupt Cook County judge like that. And midpoint of the trial, the grandmother had an attack and she had to get escorted out of the courtroom. Now, it was a great honor. I actually got a chance to meet Bobby Salerno and his late son, Alex Salerno. I met them at the Bobby's second murder trial at the Dirksen Federal Building. They allegedly killed Hal Smith. He was part of the Rocky and Felice crew. But I was so upset during B.J. Jehota's testimony that I said something out loud. Bobby, to my surprise, replied, called him a bum, and said he was so proud of his son representing him. Now, during Alderman Fred Rohde's trial, he would come to court every day surrounded by an entourage of beautiful women, young and old, dressed to the nines. Unfortunately for Fred Rohde, this lowlife here, Bob Cooley, crooked cop, mobbed up lawyer, wore a wire, testified against them, and sent him to prison. Now, some of the guys in the Grand Avenue will say, as soon as you walk in the Dirksen Federal Building, your rights get thrown right out the window. But throughout the lobby and all the floors and all the courtrooms, you'll see all kinds of federal agents. Most of these guys are older guys that have been there for years. They're just looking to retire now, collect their pension. They got a pretty easy gig. But it's good to get to know these guys at times because they can get you into the trials. Now, the first trial I ever went to was the Gus Alex trial, and I met Dimitri, Gus Alex's nephew, really cool dude, and he told me that Alex underestimated the prosecution. He felt no jury would believe a murderer scumbag like Lenny Patrick. He had all the money in the world. He could have disappeared into Europe, and nobody would ever have found him. But unfortunately, Gussie was wrong. Not the Gus Alex trial, my very first trial. I remember the Lawyers had Gussie being escorted into the courtroom every day by his lawyer's son and some lady, making it look like he had a hard time walking. I don't think it fooled the jury. I didn't like the way it looked. And then I also remember Gussie's beautiful supermodel Swedish girlfriend in court every day blowing him kisses and then crying at the end when he was convicted. Now, the Seifert family was in court pretty much every single day at the family secrets trial. I actually seen Mrs. Seifert testify, saying that Joey Lombardo was one of the masked gunmen, one of the guys responsible for killing her husband, Danny Seifert. I felt bad for the Seifert family then. I feel bad for them now. My heart definitely goes out for them. We actually found out that Joey Lombardo actually saved Mrs. Seifert from getting killed. Now, Nick Calabrese testified how they beat Nicholas DeAndrea's father and how Sam Carlisi kept repeatedly hit him with the butt of the gun. And here's his son there that was in court every day. I never said anything to him, but he was so upset. You could tell he just wanted to jump over and attack Jimmy Marcello and Nick Calabrese. His face got real red and his veins were popping out of his neck. Now, it's quite obvious you're going to meet a lot of lawyers at the Dirksen Federal Building. Great men like the late Alex Salerno there on the right, Joe the Shark Lopez, represented Frank Calabrese in the hatch, Rick Halprin there, represented Joey Lombardo, guys like Ralph Metchik, represented Chuan, Damian Chiros, Daryl Goldberg, represented Sarno, Ed Jensen, and many others. Now, I went to both ex-governor Rod Blagojevich trial, number 1 and number 2. First trial, it was a hung jury. Second trial, he was found guilty. I actually met his beautiful wife, Patty Blagojevich. She basically was going on and on how if anything were to happen, she prepared her daughters for the worst. She taught them to call 911 and never answer the front door to strangers. Now, it was always interesting during court, sometimes this gentleman, Patrick Fitzgerald, the top guy, he would like to sit in at certain trials. Usually you would see him at the close or if there was a certain witness. But he definitely, you felt his presence when he walked into the courtroom. I'll never forget, shortly after the Good Ship Lollipop trial, some of the court buffs, some of the older guys that I used to hang out with, and myself actually got invited to Judge Ann Williams' Christmas party. I was actually in the courtroom in one of the side offices there where they had catered food. And I actually thought to myself, boy, here I am, kid from Chicago, in a federal judge's Christmas party. I actually met Betty Lauren Maltese at her trial. Her, a mob boss, and his son stole $12 million from the town of Cicero. All three of the defendants were out on bond. Betty was approachable, very friendly. Her girlfriends, every day they showed up, Gucci, Louis Vuitton, Chanel, fur coats, just like Hoover's family. They showed up in court with purple suits, leather jackets, diamonds, all blinged out.